On this episode of That Kingsville Podcast, we are stylish in That Kingsville Podcast merch. Look at us.
I almost feel bad having the drawstrings hiding.
No, I know, it's professional. We're going to talk about that, and you may be able to buy some too if you love us that much, Mom.
You know what we should do? Giveaway.
Oh.
As long as you fit specific sizing guidelines.
Yeah, we can do that. We'll figure something else out. And then this episode, we talk about some significant historical moments in these gentlemen's lives in the Kingsville, Essex County area. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
It's introspective, and again, we'll talk more about these lovely pieces of merch.
It's so soft.
I'm so cozy
soft.
right now.
All that
I
more
don't
on
even need this coffee.
this episode of That Kingsville Podcast. That Kingsville Podcast proudly brought to you by Kingsville Brewery. Unfortunately, if you haven't heard, there was a major water failure at the brewery. They had a flood and unfortunately had to close to get that temporarily fixed. So the Tap House 127 unfortunately closed. However, if you're still interested in Kingsville Brewery products,
Which
It is
won't be
not.
watered down.
Oh.
Gosh, Steve, you had every episode valuable contributions. Go on that Kingsville Podcast, KingsvilleBrewery.com. Peruse their delicious beers, free delivery in Essex and Kingsville area. Thank you, Kingsville Brewery, for supporting That Kingsville Podcast. Welcome to That Kingsville Podcast. I'm your host, Dave. Kevin, Steve Ianson. Look at us. We look professional now. We have uniforms, guys.
I like it.
Yeah. So,
I feel very varsity.
It is very varsity. Kevin very, very kindly connected us with a wonderful merch supplier. These are Campus Crew. Does everybody remember Campus Crew?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, you understand that these are, like, very, very
This is
luxurious
quality,
merchandise.
I have a Campus Crew hoodie that I still rock at home. I'm pretty sure I got when I was like 16.
Yeah, and you won't give that up because
Never.
they don't make fabric like that, normally anymore.
No,
Yeah,
except
but so
except
just
in
so
these wonderful.
so people are aware, that's like 27 years ago almost, right?
Yes.
Just some perspective.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Thanks for that
Like
quick
some
math,
people might
Steve.
look at but some people might look at you and think, well, that's only 5 years ago.
No one thinks that. No
Oh,
one
okay.
thinks that.
Well, 10 years ago.
Thanks,
but-
Steve.
So
Yes.
yeah, we
Yes.
since we're still here after so many years, right? We figured, yeah, you know what? Well, let's go get some merchandise. Actually, we also had listeners ask if they could buy some. So we did a test run. We did an order initially, so we did some hoodies and some T-shirts, and they're embroidered and they look fantastic. I got them in a different cut. So what we want to ask is any of the listeners, if you are interested in purchasing merchandise, please reach out to us on the Facebook. Leave a comment or contact us personally if you know our contact information, and let us know. We need to order a certain amount of goods at a certain time in order to place an order with them, but they're relatively affordable. Hoodies are $60 and T-shirts are $30. T-shirts are screen printed with the same logo, and the hoodies are embroidered. But again,
It's quality.
yeah, there's
This is
a
quality.
these are unisex hoodies. There's a woman's cut hoodie as well, and then just standard unisex T-shirts. So, you're interested, check it out. Otherwise, you're just going to stare at us for the entire episode.
You know what? I'm gonna pop the. I'm gonna.
Oh,
Can I around?
I don't
Can
know.
Make it. Oh yeah.
it was very, very.
Oh, now I'm so.
I was
bored.
just
He's
going
going
to
to be
sweat.
sweating now.
Sweating.
Yeah, this is a terrible idea.
Yeah, it's
It's a
just
really bad idea.
it is fashionable nonetheless. So yeah, we figured again, like I said, people were asking for it. Everybody likes merch. We're not trying to make any money. It's just a matter of, hey, if you want to help and support us and wear it around. I know my kids have some, wife has some, mom. You're surprised when you come home from vacation. You got one too. We ordered one for her. You guys and your families have some.
I left. My wife had hers on when I left the house.
Did she?
She was rocking it when I got home. She's like, "Yep, comfy hoodie,
Love it. Oh,
done and done."
absolutely comfy. And again, quality goods. So, the team at Campus Crew, don't retail anymore. They don't have any retail locations. They do mostly some varsity for universities and different organizations. And Kev, you got in touch with them for some merch for Lee and Maria's.
Yeah, Lee and Maria's will rock some Campus Crew.
Yeah, so if you go to the farm at Lee and Maria's when they're open, because they're closed right now for winter. But all the Lee and Maria's merch is also Campus Crew. So,
but today we're rocking
that
the
Kingsville podcast.
podcast.
Yeah, look at this. This
Beautiful,
lovely. Yeah. So follow up from last episode. You know, we were really high on the Lions and whatnot, and
I'm so sad. I don't even want to talk about it.
I'm not sad at all.
No, I don't think fans should be sad. It's the way. Sorry, I totally dominated the conversation really fast. The way they lost was sad.
Not sad.
I think the way that they lost was sad.
No, I don't think it was sad. I think it's even more motivational than you think. Right. The Lions, for all intents and purposes, didn't project themselves to be there at that time, but they persevered and they won games and they edged things out. So they tried again and they played their style of football with Dan Campbell, the coach, and how he wants to work a team, and it just didn't work out. Right? You know, it worked out so many other times to squeak them through for that. You know, that season. It's bound to happen. That's why we watch football. That's why we are interested in the sport. And yeah, it's sad because we were all hoping, but it gives all of us Lion fans hope for the future. Like, I don't want a one and done, right? Like the LA Rams, they traded away the team. They brought in Matt Stafford. They won the Super Bowl and have been garbage since.
Yeah.
Not garbage, just not the caliber
not
team.
The same.
Like a lot of their players left too. And, bam, it's gone. Where the Lions are now building.
And it's been so fascinating watching what it's done for the city and the surrounding area, even, Windsor, Essex County, because there's a huge amount of Lions fans in this area, as we talked about last episode. But the excitement and really putting a positive spin nationally, not just on the team, but the city in itself. For years it's been the sad sack Lions, and I'm not going to say the other term that, we've used for years regarding that team, but a lot more respect and hopefully a destination for some free agents. And yeah, you're right. Like, the excitement's there, and it's hopefully just a stepping stone.
The NFC North is going to be a lot tougher next year, though.
100%. But that's great, right? Yeah. That's our division. That's now competitive football instead of pushovers.
That's true.
They'll all go 10-7 to make the playoffs.
Wouldn't that be wild?
Oh. But then it makes it that much more difficult, right? But that's good. That's what you want. You want competitive football. Yeah. I said to Kath before I left the house on Sunday, like, all I wanted to see was just the game be close. Like, that was it. I didn't need the Lions to win, but I just wanted to see a game that still mattered at the 2-minute warning. And we had that. Mm-hmm. It was a game that the Lions were in to the end, and they were up against probably the best team in the NFL. And they looked right at home against them. Mm-hmm. And I was not expecting that.
Nobody was, right? Like, and that first half with everybody, the Lions got out to an enormous lead at the halftime, and like all the friends that we were texting and whatnot, it's like, is this real? Are we really leading by 17 at the half? Is this really happening? Pinch me. And then coming out of the halftime, a couple of unfortunate plays happen, a fumble, but change of possession with a short field. Swung the momentum back towards San Francisco. And they're also a very put together team. That's why, again, when we had the picks, I'm weary of San Francisco, and San Francisco's never lived up to their caliber until now. So
Christian McCaffrey did not have one of his
best games at all.
No, and that was surprising because I thought that he was going to just destroy them on the receiving.
Yeah, but
acting as a receiver, like,
it didn't happen. They killed him other ways. But it's a significant moment in local history, and I say local because, without us being close to the border, Detroit sports is pretty much our sports. It's our professional teams too, but. You guys were reporters in this area for a very long time, right? A decade, 20 years. You've seen a lot. And I know through the episodes that we've had, we've touched on some of those significant stories. But this year, in this season of that Kingsville podcast, we want to kind of take a little bit of a retrospective and talk about the town and things that have happened and significant people. And a lot of that you guys were front and center with. You know, doing reporting about significant situations, incidents, happenings, people. So, guys, what are some of the top, I don't know, 5 things that, you know, as professional reporters in this area that you are holding high in your, you know, I'm going to bring these stories out when I'm going to tell my grandkids what I did?
Well, I look at it in two ways. Like, maybe not, some of them I wouldn't necessarily tell my grandkids, but, you know, they stick out. And I remember I actually got hired in 2000, but prior to that, I was an intern. I was studying at St. Clair College, and I got a placement at the Reporter, which for convenience and everything else. And one of the first things I ever went to was in September of 1999, and it was I don't even know what to call it, but the 401, the crash, the
fog.
In the fog. And you know, it was tough. Like nothing. It was just surreal because obviously nothing was moving, and we were literally Greg Sims, the former editor of the paper, him and I went out. He took me out, and you're walking along the 401, and just vehicle after vehicle, just it was really surreal and a real sort of, hello, you're an adult, get your stuff together, because you know.
Kevin, for just a little bit of background, you weren't here.
I wasn't here, but I was 19, living in Omemee at the time, and I remember it on Channel 9 News in Toronto, like the 6 p.m. news, sitting there and watching this crazy pile up without really understanding. Like, I didn't know where this region even was at the time.
Yeah. So, but early in the morning, there was a massive fog patch that kind of stretched north-south across Essex County, kind of in the center part of the county. So that same morning, I commuted on number 3 highway to St. Clair College because I just started college. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, a little bit further inland in, you know, the 401 region, that's where the density of that fog patch kind of really encumbered vision. And how many cars was it? 100 and...
It was
100?
I don't know. But like semis and, you know, I don't want to go into too much detail, obviously, but it was just, again, surreal is the word that keeps coming to mind because nothing prepares you for it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's like watching a kid play with his little toys, and, you know, you've got your mini cars and you have a little fun little crash with them. Mm-hmm. This was real life and just, yeah.
It's a weird feeling too, because I've been on the 401 for crashes, nothing like that. But it's a weird feeling walking on the 401.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that was like there was obviously nothing was moving. There ambulances and police officers, just fire trucks, just you couldn't even count them. How many? And I don't know. I don't need numbers. I don't recall numbers or anything like that. Yeah. But yeah, that was sort of my welcome to the real world moment when it came to the job. And then after that, you know, it always seemed like for a while there, every year there was a major fire, but then it led 2002 when Hordapac hit, and not one of my better, I will say, not one of my better moments personally. It was June, and I want to say it happened early in the week or late. I can't remember exactly when it happened. It was either like a Thursday or Friday,
I want to say,
or it was the start of a week, because I remember at the end of that week I was going on vacation. And I hadn't taken a vacation for a couple of years. I didn't realize and never really thought of the term burnout, but I was getting to that point. And I didn't do the incident justice for the paper. I know that. I didn't know it at the time, but I dogged it because I was like, no, just get me out of here. I want to go. We're going to Ottawa. We're going to PEI, that kind of thing, me and a buddy. But on the incident itself, there's so many components to it. I was actually watching, it was the World Cup at the time too. So it was like 1:30, 1:45 in the morning, England were playing Brazil, and the phone went, and I'm like, who is calling? Mm-hmm. Like, and we're talking landline, right? Yeah. So, you know, the whole house would hear it. And it was Greg, and He told me what he needed me to do. So I remember driving along Gladstone or Wellington, or Grace, one of those 3 streets, and OPP were knocking on people's doors, telling them to evacuate, and I was to get pictures and if I could talk to a couple of them. And then it just it went on, the evacuation to the Shirk in Leamington. I know one of the fire department personnel was out of town at the time, and this individual just basically, was allowed to get down the 401 because it was of that huge significance. So, there was a lot of fallout, no pun intended, from that. But that was huge, simply because I don't know that we've ever had an evacuation like that. It wasn't like we were evacuating the town, thankfully. But there was a lot of people who were asked to leave their homes because of the way the smoke was blowing.
The toxicity content of those, right? Yeah. Like that was very rough grind, toxic plastics.
Yeah, like you said, a fallout zone, basically, of just ash.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, and the Bryans fire right downtown on Main Street, like that was earlier than your career.
That was in, I want to say it was early high school, because I remember that one, that was tough to take because I was an avid sports card collector. But even more so, it was a place to go for a lot of teenagers,
I was
just
there.
to go and hang out, whether you're a comic book fan or sports card collector, or just wanted to go look at stuff. That was a tough one. No fire is a good fire. But we've certainly had some doozies.
And Lakeshore Hotel.
Yeah.
Was that you would have reported on that then? Maybe that had to have been early 2000s.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I didn't know about it as it was happening. I seem to recall going and getting, as the firefighters were doing overhaul. Getting some pictures then.
Yeah, the Lakeshore Hotel, right? Is that the last living legacy of what was once the Metawas properties and whatnot, right? There's still the dance floor that's, up until recently, until they started with the improvements at Metawas Park, right? There was the Metawas Hotel being Hiram Walker's personal playground and whatnot, turn of the century, yada, yada. So, the seems that any time there was, some sort of controversy, it's kind of centered around that building and what's happening, and then it burned down.
Right. And I guess I went with those two first because that kind of leads into your arrival in the community, right? As timeline goes.
Yeah, I moved here Labor Day weekend of 2003 is when I moved in. And then it was actually, speaking of fog, I'd never heard of a fog day before. And my very first day, I go into the radio station, and the news director at the time says to me, "Oh, I need you to make a couple calls because there's a fog day. We got to see if the buses are running in the afternoon." I thought she was joking. I thought it was like a prank because it's my first day. And she's like, "Oh, go call." I'm like, "Yeah, fog day." She's like, "No, seriously, you have to call the school board and find out if the buses are running in the afternoon." I'm like, "The buses were canceled today. There's no snow." And then I realized the fog days were a thing, which was surprising to someone from Central Ontario.
Right.
The funny thing, we had just had a couple of fog days in the past couple of weeks. My daughter asked me, if it rains, do the buses run? I said, yes. If it rains, the buses run. It's only when the conditions are unsafe for children to wait for the bus.
Right.
She's like, well, why? Rain's not safe. You could slip and hurt yourself. Quit trying to get out of school.
Yeah. But that is an interesting point, just as an aside, because people will question, why aren't the buses running on certain snow days?
Yeah.
The roads are fine.
Yeah.
They're not taking into account the fact that these children have to get to the bus stop, and those conditions aren't necessarily safe.
Or they live on a concession that may not be groomed, or some kids have an extended ride pulling in from Harrow for the high school, right? And that's not safe to put kids in buses that way. But sorry,
it's true. No, you're right.
Isn't it? Okay, but back to
I would say the first major story I covered was the Peely plane crash in January of 2004. That I had been here for about 3 months at the time, and I was living in a basement apartment on Cottonwood.
I remember that place. I visited you.
Yeah, you did. And so I was at a friend's house, and it was a Saturday. I got the call around 8 p.m. And I had a couple of drinks because it was a Saturday and I'm not on the clock. Yeah. And then Deb Minot from the OPP calls my cell phone at the time, which I can't believe I had a radio station cell phone, but in 2003. But yeah, so she calls my cell phone and says, you need to get to the police station right now. We're about to do a press conference and you should be here. She's like, did you see the news? I'm like, no. And she's like, there's been a plane crash.
And this is before even Twitter, I think.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't really social media.
There was
nothing.
So there was nothing. And so I get a friend to drive me to the police station because I couldn't drive, and go and I'm talking to Deb and explain to her, Deb, you know, I'm sorry, I've been drinking, but we have to do this interview, and so then we get into it.
She was great at her job, and
that was fantastic. Yeah. One of the best community officer, probably the best community officer that I ever had to really have a lot of dealings with.
Right. And I'm sorry to cut you off in your story, but she deserves credit.
She's fantastic. Yeah. And there have been a lot of great community officers that have come in through that role.
It's a tough job.
And I think that job has changed over the years, which is why the relationship between the OPP and media changed, was because the demands changed. But back then, at that time, it was still a fairly open two-way street.
Right.
And so Deb, we talked about it at the time. There was not a whole lot of information. They knew a plane had gone down. They were still trying to ascertain kind of what the situation was. But then, I mean, as most people who are around the region at the time would know, then that search dragged on and on and started and then continued to be so difficult for those families, where it was basically 2 weeks before they finally determined that they had called the search off. And Steve, I know you covered it as well, and we were, you know, at those together. We were at those daily press briefings that would happen at the arena. All the family would be there. We'd be getting the latest updates from the Canadian Coast Guard. They'd be talking about, you know, Samuel Risley, icebreaker that was there, and there was I forget his name, but the expert who kind of looked like the guy from Independence Day, and the like scientist, what's his name? Kind of had this crazy like independence. He did. He did. And he would come and he would explain like what the search is.
Brent Spillner?
Yeah. Spiner. So yeah. Data.
Made up memory on this guy.
Wow.
That's crazy. Good for you.
That's why I like trivia.
And so he would explain kind of what they were doing with the search and what they had found, and that was like, it was difficult, not to in any way compare the difficulty of what a reporter is feeling to what a family member is feeling, because that's a totally different thing. But as a reporter, where it was our job to be the one that was explaining what was happening to the community, there is some, how would I put this? There's a burden on reporters to make sure that you're getting it right. And there's a responsibility to be the community's eyes and ears in those situations, because people have a lot of questions. There's a lot of rumors. There's a lot of misinformation that's going around because of the telephone game. It's not social media. It's just, and purposeful misinformation, like, is a problem now. It's just people are mishearing things, misremembering things, and so you're trying to make sure you're dotting all of your I's and crossing all of your T's every single time in every single report, at every single half hour that's happening throughout the day for 2 solid weeks. And then I would go home and the search was out my bedroom window, and so it like burnout was. You talk about it when you were feeling it. As after that, again, no comparison to how what families are feeling, but I remember after those 2 weeks and they had called that search off, the radio station actually gave me 2 weeks off, which was kind of unheard of for a reporter to get that kind of time off at the time, because they knew like I would just, wasn't quite right after that extended period of time being assigned to one story so much. And But then it went on. Like that story continued for years after.
Right.
Like I think that was 2004. I think it was 3 to 4 years later when we were at the Lakeside Pavilion when the TSB was announcing the findings of that investigation.
Yeah, it was considerably later.
Yeah, and really the findings were exactly what everyone knew. It was overweight and they didn't have proper de-icing equipment. But it was that story just continued. And even I did a quick Google search just to make sure I had my dates and figures right. So it was 20 years ago. It's 20 years ago this month. Actually, 20 years ago, 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Yes.
And there was still lawsuits happening, stories about them 3 years ago. So it's and rightfully so. Like families, there's no statute of limitations on stuff like that, and so it should continue, and families should get everything that they deserve. So, but that was a difficult one for sure.
Outside of the story, the one sign of significance was always the other media that were there. It was one thing to rub elbows with the likes of Kevin Black and Gino Conti and Sasha Long and people like that. But then, you've got national media coming in, and the fact that they, were there a year and a half after they had been there for Hordapac, and they're back again. And I remember thinking to myself, just stop these things from happening in this town, please. It was tough because you talk about the toll. And then, you get to know, you don't necessarily know the people initially, but you get to know them. You get to know them whether it's through the conversations you have to have with them through work or other external circumstances. And it takes on a different spin in that moment. But watching
you always knew that it was a big story when there was satellite trucks outside.
Yes. Yeah, and that was just it.
And you'd pull up and WDIV has a stake truck with like a full size satellite that's.
And I was just going to say, I do remember like even the U.S. media came over for this one. That was.
You know how I would always know it was an important story? There was one guy, I don't know where he was stationed out of, and I never asked his name, and I wish I had of, but he was from Global. And every once in a while, he would be down here for something if it was significant enough.
In London, right?
It must have been from London.
That was the closest global.
Global TV have a London? I thought they were more like.
I thought Kitchener maybe.
I was going to say.
Oh, maybe you're right.
Yeah,
but
I
is Global even a thing anymore?
Oh yeah,
really?
Yeah. All the chorus. Actually, the station I started on is now a Global News.
Okay.
But he always had the best equipment. Like it was like brand new. Like I remember poor Sasha Long would be at an event and she would have like her SVHS camera with a sun gun on the top and like the 20-pound battery belt like around her, like almost falling over to the side. And this big guy from Global had this tiny little camera, not a whole lot different than a whole lot different than what Gary has there, but not a whole lot different in size than what Gary has. And it, like he would just be like, "Oh, that sucks." Sasha like, I'm falling over.
No, and they're troopers. I guess getting away from maybe some of the tougher stories, a couple that stand out for different reasons. One of the first ones that comes to mind on a happy note was the Extreme build when they built the home in Ruthven.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It was all done by local. It was basically a group of local builders came together to build the home to raise money for.
I think it was. I think it was the arena.
Okay.
I think it was the arena rebuild.
Okay, that I can't remember for sure, but the one thing that stands out is for the first few years I was with the paper, the Kingsville Fire Department didn't have a ladder truck.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then they purchased one, and what they did is they put it all the way up because they wanted me to go up in the bucket and take a shot down of everyone who was involved, because you had this Extreme build, like I say, it was the developers coming together. There were so many people from the community that lent a hand in some way, whether it was just helping the building or laying sod or cleaning or prepping or whatever it was. There were so many hands involved in this project. So this huge group of people, and I was able to get the shot, and it was fantastic for me on so many levels. Like it was a proud moment because I was like, I got to be the one to take the picture. But the view obviously was fantastic, and just watching everyone with these big smiles. And that leads into the second.
Before you go, I should point out that whoever lives in that house, your insulation in the west dining room wall on the exterior is probably a little sketchy.
It's okay-ish.
Sorry about that.
It's okay-ish.
I did my best.
The other time I got to go up in the ladder truck was right at the Four Corners when they painted a hockey center ice circle for Hockeyville. And again, 2 people came to do the face off, and I was able to go up and shoot directly down and take the picture. I don't know that I'd be allowed up back of the bucket truck now for insurance reasons.
No, probably not.
Stuff like that. Fair enough.
Time.
But let's. I mean, I think all of us can contribute to Hockeyville. Like that was such another surreal one. I remember
06?
07.
07?
We were actually away. Tam and I were up visiting her parents in Wawa at the time, and I was basically asked to cut my vacation short because Nelson had mayor stuff to do for Hockeyville, which I understood, and I was somewhat begrudgingly. I'm like, no, I'm on vacation. This is booked, but I'm like, it's a big deal. So, I remember being at the Kingsville Arena and seeing Scott Oak in the stands from CBC, and then having a chat with Kelly Rudy right in front of the canteen and stuff like that. But beyond that, just another great moment of the community coming together. Like Deb Gowdy and her group of people that really spearheaded, and we finished as runners up.
Second.
Yeah. I remember I think, was that when they came? Trying to remember. So Hockeyville, did they come and then it was like there was no NHL season that year, so then they did like the movie?
No.
Because there was, what was the time? Oh, it was the bus crash I'm thinking of. Sorry. It was the Windsor Wildcats bus crash.
Okay.
I was mixing it up.
Okay.
Because I remember I interviewed Ron McLean at it, and he went off about this. It's like he's like, I'm trying to remember her name, but she's an absolutely unbelievable player. And he was talking about some tournament that he had seen her play in AAA and like Swift Current, Alberta. And he's like, oh, Megan Augusta. And she's from Kingsville. And like, yeah. And he went on, that was before she was ever on the Olympics. And just like went off about her. The hockey knowledge that he had in that interview was insane. About someone that like is from Kingsville, but is someone that at that time was like no one outside of Kingsville or Leamington would have known who she was.
Right. The thing is with Hockeyville, and they did so many other events, is you had people involved in that wouldn't necessarily have a stake in the arena, but they saw the value, they saw the community coming together, and they're like, yeah, I'm on board with this. Let's see where this goes. And I remember being upstairs when they made the announcement, and there was a lot of tears.
Yeah.
A lot of tears shed by a lot of people, but from the reporter standpoint, that's I was sad, but at the same time,
it's good news.
I got to talk to people.
Yeah.
And that's just it. Like second was disappointing, but and that at that time, the north wing of the arena wasn't there.
Yeah.
Right. It was the funds from Hockeyville that were able to.
And some sponsorship.
Oh, certainly.
Thanks
but
Domino's Canada.
It was that kind of started it all, right?
Let's dial it back a bit though, because the funds from Hockeyville really paid for that sign that's on the corner of Jasperson and Road 2. Like it was only about $50,000.
Yeah, it wasn't much.
Right?
It wasn't much.
So
it was a little more than that.
Somehow.
I thought it was
under 100.
It was under 100 for sure.
Sure. But at the end of the day, again, what it did was kind of spearhead.
Yes.
Invigorated the public in order to continue growth and development.
One I had, this wasn't Kingsville specific, but it was it was 2004 as well. It was May, I want to say 18th, 2004. It was a Thursday because I was at a Flyers game.
Time and temperature.
Hold on. I was covering a Flyers game, and
you said May?
Yeah. Oh wait, no, it wouldn't have been a Flyer. Oh, it must have been Council. So then it would have been a Monday. Anyway,
May 18th, 2004. Let's do some quick research here.
I might have the date wrong too. Again,
Is
it's 20
Dave
years
okay?
ago.
Roll with the story, please. Steve will do
Let's
his
look it up.
research.
Let's look it up. So I leave the station. It's late. It was like 10:30, 11 o'clock when I was leaving the radio station, heading back to my illustrious basement apartment on Cottonwood, which I'm pretty sure wasn't legal. And
But it was home.
It was home.
May
And-
18th, 2004 was a Tuesday.
Oh, there you go. So I was probably at Lakeshore Council. I can do this all day. And so so it happened. I know this happened.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure this event happened.
Something
What happened, Kevin?
So I get home and so I'm sitting on my couch watching some TV before I head to bed, and all of a sudden this crazy like purple lightning starts. Like, well, what's that? So I'd never seen lightning that color before, and it was really kind of the first time that I'd been here for like a proper thunderstorm, and like, well, that doesn't seem normal. And I go outside, and like the weather was really like you could tell in the air, like it was just lightning at this point, but it was like instantly more humid than it had been when I had gone in the house. The thunder cracks were crazy loud, and I remember thinking like, nah, something's not right. So I turn around and I go back to the radio station, and as I get there, this monsoon of rain begins. And we got in over the span of 30 minutes, 6 inches of rain in Leamington. And I remember calling the fire department saying, what's happening? They had to shut roads down. The Peely Island Drive was shut down. All the roads A through Z were all shut down. And so end up doing the story, telling people like stay off the roads, look out for ponding water, stay away from the ditches. At that time, didn't really understand because it's in the middle of the night, like the full breadth of what the destruction had been. But then obviously the next morning, once the sun comes up, start to realize entire roads are gone. Like road, I want to say is a B, I think, or D maybe, like just never reopened again. And I remember going out the next morning after this storm, and the person had called the radio station. They're like, my basement's like really flooded. Do you want like to come out and see it? But yes. So jump in the news truck and drive down Point Peely Drive and pull in this person's front yard and go in their house. And like their house is still like operating. And she opens up her basement door and there's water to the floorboards all the way to the very top of the stairs.
It's like 8 feet of water.
Yeah. Yeah. And I look at her and I say, where's your electrical panel? She's like, oh, down there. Like, ooh, we should not be in your house right now. We could die. And so then we go outside and call the police and then they end up coming down. But after that storm, they've never allowed another building permit in that entire region.
Oh,
all building has been ceased because the entire area is now considered a floodplain.
Oh, yeah. Insurance won't cover it.
Because insurance won't cover it. They had to do geomorphological studies.
Spell that.
They had to and there was like 500-600 people out at meetings at the Portuguese Club talking about like how their entire family legacy was tarnished because they could no longer get to their farms because the road that went to their farms doesn't exist anymore. There was entire concessions that had people living on those concessions shut down and never reopened. It was one of the craziest things with storms that I've ever seen. And the only rain that I think that I have seen that could even compare is the one that we had last summer.
Which leads us into June of 2010.
I was just going to say, it is the one, the night of infamy.
Yeah. I remember a storm. I remember a storm on the Saturday night.
Yep.
I'm thinking, oh, okay, it's a storm. It's June. It's normal kind of thing. Anyways, the next day, Sunday morning, Tam, her parents were down visiting, and Kalila would have been 1. They were going to go to the Flamingo or wherever it was, or what was the Flamingo? Tropicana, whatever.
Erie.
For breakfast. And I get a call. Yeah, you might want to come take a look. She said, the restaurant's closed and it looks like a tornado went through here. I'm like, oh, okay. So at the time, we were living near where the Superstore is. So just the other side of Talbot and near Sturgeon Woods. So a little bit, obviously, away from the lake. Didn't hear anything through the night. But I remember going out, taking a look and thinking, wow, this is significant.
Yeah.
And then working my way along Seacliff Drive and into Kingsville because, the significant damage was in Leamington, but there was still a lot that happened in Kingsville. And I remember talking to a gentleman on St. Luke and just kind of said, like, what was it like? And he said, basically what people tell you, it was like a freight train coming through.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going up to Cedar Island and this huge old tree had come down and crushed the washroom area, or it had come down right in front. I can't remember exactly. I remember we had a front page picture.
I was just going to say that was the front page of the paper.
So, that was... We were lucky in a lot of ways. The way it kind of skirted the shoreline, and I don't know that were there any fatalities.
No fatalities.
To that? So that in that sense, we were lucky. Obviously, some homeowners weren't. Some were completely destroyed, and it really devastated the landscape.
Yeah,
really changed the face of it, and that was all of
Seacliff Park. Right, Seacliff Park was very densely wooded, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like when they tore out the old band shell, like that whole upper section that's close to Seacliff, like that was wooded heavily.
Right.
And coming along Seacliff from Kingsville into Leamington, all the trees were like matchsticks. Like it was just, all broken off about telephone pole height. And those trees used to be like a mangrove canopy over and that a lot of residents moved away because they weren't comfortable with the way that now that's what Seacliff's landscape was.
I remember I did, like you, I got a phone call from Leamington Fire. It was about 6 a.m. And it was Chuck Parsons. Chuck says, hey, Kev, like you should get out of bed and start doing your job because it's crazy. Like, okay, so get up, and we were living at the farmhouse at the time, and we had just the day before planted basil plants, and so go outside, and there was 3 of our freshly planted basil plants knocked over. Like, okay, Chuck, like big story, and then get in the car and drive to. Actually, Kathy went with me. Get to the to Albuna. And then you can't get any farther because there's a monster tree across the road. I remember that, yeah. And I said, oh, Kath, I got to take you home. Like, I actually am going to have to work.
Yeah, for a while.
Yeah. And so we went live on a Sunday morning. So Laura Carney was here at the time, who's now morning news at 680 News in Toronto. So I call Laura and like, hey, Laura, you got to go into the radio station. I'm going to start calling you in reports. We're going to have to break in every 20 minutes. And start giving updates because it's mayhem, and she's like, I know, I was already on my way. I'm like, all right, so start driving, and I get to spot on Seacliff where there's actually a couple new homes that were just built along the shore, and the last name of the people that owned it at the time was Verhagen, and so I walk up, and there's a huge tree down right through the middle of their house. And I'm talking to him, and he's like, "Oh, this is our cottage, and we were here last night." He says, "But my son, who has special needs, he was really agitated last night, and so we decided, you know what, we're not going to stay the night here. We're going to pack up and we're going to go back home." So they ended up leaving, and when that tree came down, it went right through his bed. And so there very well could have been a fatality, but just sheer luck and a sense that there was something not right. Ended up saving a person, but that devastation was insane. But I remember saying to John Adams, about 2-3 months later, they had just, I want to say a month earlier, released a 5 or 10 year plan of capital projects that they wanted to do. And those capital projects was marina redevelopment, work along Point Pelee Drive, redevelopment of Seacliff Park, and there's a couple others. And they basically were able to knock all of them off with insurance money from that. Tornado.
Pay for the boardwalk and whatnot.
Yeah.
So. Over the years, you guys have, you've seen a lot of those kind of circumstances, but to kind of round out the episode, because we're almost at the hour mark.
Yeah.
You've had to have interviewed some significant people in society. Steve, don't cut me off. I'm the host. What do you want, Steve?
No, I was just going to say, before we got to that, I'm listening and I'm going through different things. There's 3 stories that really sort of stuck out in my mind that I did real quick, and not necessarily famous people, but I'll go as quick as I can. The first one was an interview with Randy Alsop when he retired from the fire department.
Yeah.
Just a really great interview. Very unique situation. Oh, yeah,
great
hilarious.
Guy.
Absolutely
great
hilarious.
Guy. Love me some Randy.
But just unique situation as a deaf firefighter. That was a great interview. There's another story I did where, and I can't remember, it pains me, but I can't remember the exact details, but a kid basically saved, it was either his dad or his stepdad, did the story. And anyway, as an aside, it ended up being submitted to the OCNA, Ontario Community Newspapers Association. And for newspapers of that size, we got second place in all of Ontario.
It's amazing.
So that was a good one. And the other one that really quickly stands out was when Monday Night Men's Hockey League, one of the players suffered cardiac arrest. The arena had installed
defibrillator.
Thank you. It wasn't coming to me. Defibrillator. And there was enough guys with know-how on the ice. They saved the guy's life. And he, within, I don't know how long, but he was playing again. But that one stands out too, because that was just, I remember dropping the kids off at school. Somebody mentioned it in passing. I started making a couple of calls, and all of a sudden we had this really, really good story. Not good from a perspective of like, but good because it was like, here's the community again coming together and doing that. But anyway, back to the people.
And you both have had a unique perspective on that because you were the one telling that story in different versions of media. So, I'm, not to say that this episode will be the be all and end all of storytelling of your careers, but it's significant enough because you were present for your job and you were there, but you had to have notched a couple of ticks on I did that kind of thing over the years. So, going along the lines of the famous people that you've interviewed and the significance of them coming into the community. So, like, of the top 2 or 3 significant famous interviews and or stories that you've written, who would it be? Right? Because we're lucky in our area, we do have a lot of, international celebrities that people just don't realize are from our community or visit our community on a regular.
I remember I was, again, fresh. It was probably 2000, and Bobby Orr was visiting the old Mike Pierce car dealership, 77 and Road 4.
That was
as it was.
Was that not the used car corral?
No, that was at the Tilbury Auto Mall.
But anyway, had the opportunity to do a one-on-one with Bobby Orr, and I just, I didn't know what to say. I just remember sitting there in Mike Pierce's office having a brief chat, and that was that. Did get to interview, and this won't sit well with a lot of people because I know he's terribly unpopular these days in a lot of circles, but I remember when Susan Whalen was MP and Justin Trudeau came down to speak with some local greenhouse operators.
Yep.
He was an MP himself at the time. This was before he was Prime Minister.
Carleton, wasn't he? What was his riding?
Montreal.
That's
somewhere.
it.
Yeah, I think it was Montreal.
Ken Dryden at Colio Winery.
Ken Dryden.
Yeah, I forgot.
Colin Mockery. The comedian.
Because he was the movie.
Yep. And that was a good one.
My kids are in that movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
we should have them on.
Out at the Kiwanis camp.
Yeah.
So funny. Hey, he's funny story.
Yes.
So my in-laws, the Clausen Blueberries, is right across the street from the Kiwanis camp on 50, County Road 50.
Yeah.
And at that time, the kids were a little younger, so they would go spend some time out at the farm with grandma and papa, and they would hang out and whatnot. And Ted is friends with the guy that kind of runs the park, and they knew that there was this movie that was being shot, and there was the need for children for extras because it was a kids camp that was set in the 90s. So the kids, and Jen actually too, are all extras and significantly seen through this movie. Now, mind you, we haven't been able to show the children the movie because the subject matter is quite vulgar. But eventually they'll get old enough and that subject matter will be. But there you go.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So
a couple others that came to mind. People who Migration Hall, Stompin' Tom Connors. That was a fun interview. Then you just think of all the people who've been to Migration Hall. We've probably interviewed most of them.
Ashley McIsaac.
Colin James.
Yeah.
Stuart McLean, et cetera, et cetera.
What was her name? What was
Tommy Hunter, Rita McNeil.
Rita McNeil. Yeah, she came.
The Waltons.
Yeah.
Although I was in high school when the Waltons came, I wasn't working. That was like the first concert ever at Migration Hall.
That was.
Are we sticking to people that came to Kingsville?
Well, okay. You were a reporter. If it's somebody of significance that you're like, yeah, I interviewed President Clinton or Obama or whatever. Go ahead.
I did Clinton.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Where?
In Windsor. He came. It was an IRCA Foundation fundraiser.
Wow.
He was former president at the time, not current president.
Yeah.
But yeah, got an interview with Clinton. I've interviewed every prime minister Mulrooney on, except for Kim Campbell. I haven't interviewed Kim Campbell. Not all as prime minister. Interviewed Mulrooney after he was prime minister. Interviewed Chrétien as prime minister. I have a great Paul Martin story. I'll tell that one in a sec. Interviewed Trudeau. I interviewed Stephen Harper when he was running for the nomination. He came to the area, and Belinda Stronach I interviewed.
Wow.
Yeah. Belinda was quite the looker in person. Yeah. But so I interview when I interviewed Paul Martin, it was at one of the community centers up in the city. And he comes in, and anytime you go, you have to go into the area first, and then you stand there, and then you wait for him to come. And so there's always the RCMP that are there, and then there's the RCMP that you're not supposed to know are there, but every other person in the room except for these 5 people. So clearly they're the RCMP. Yeah. And then Paul Martin came in, and we got it wasn't the barricade behind the barricade that you see now. It was we surrounded him, holding my mic out, interviewing the prime minister, which doesn't happen now. And that was crazy, but he was there, and there was, I want to say his total entourage was maybe 8 people, eight police, and then him and a couple staffers. So on the very next day, Kwame Kilpatrick comes to Windsor to have a bilateral meeting with Eddie Francis. Yeah. And Kwame must have had 20 of the biggest people I have ever seen in my life. They must have been 7 foot and 400 pounds of muscle. Yeah. They were just monsters. And I remember holding my microphone out, and newspaper reporters are lucky because they don't have to do this for an extended period of time. But doing this for an extended period of time hurts so much more. And so it was, I think we talked to him for 10 minutes, and I remember leaving, and I looked at, I think it was probably Peter Langell from 800, and saying, man, my arm hurts more than if I had gone to the gym for 8 hours. And he looks at me, he's like, oh, rubber arm. Yeah. I got the last ever interview with Brett Favre as a professional football player.
Wow.
Yeah, he was playing the Lions when he was with the Vikings. Yep. And it was the last week of the season.
So we beat him.
Yeah. And then I shoved my microphone in his face as he was walking on the bus. He did not like that.
Probably not.
No, but I got my interview, and then he walked on the bus, and he retired, and I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yep.
Emmett Smith at the auto show, I interviewed him.
Steve Eiserman.
Oh, that's a good story. We're gonna save that story. That's a well told story.
Yeah,
that's a well told story, and
nothing bad.
Nothing bad.
No,
your weight game is strong.
Yeah, I have patience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alice Cooper, that was cool.
Nice.
Yeah, interviewed him. He is a very avid golfer. We talked about his golf game, which was fun.
Yeah, strange. They're all human.
Yeah,
right. They're all human.
Yeah,
but
actually, there was a guy from Parliament Funkadelic I interviewed who was a
Bootsy
member
Collins?
who played at Kingsville Golf Club.
that's cool.
Yeah,
there are a couple of locals that are a part of Parliament. An old coworker. Of
What
mine.
was nice is when you had people like, you know, when you're in the business, and you know, Doug Quick at Kingsville Golf was always really good at tipping me off and saying, "Hey, you know, this is going on," and that people like that are always appreciated. So.
No,
Oh, what's his name? He was at oh my
Sure
god.
it
the
was
guy with
Parliament Funkadelic, right?
No. The guy who was at the golfer. Crazy. Oh, why can't I remember his name?
John Daly.
Yes. John Daly.
Okay.
Why did I put that together? The golfer, that's crazy.
Yeah, the crazy golfer. He was at, you interviewed him too.
No.
Oh, you didn't go that day?
No.
He was at Kingsville Golf?
No, I think I might have been off that day.
Oh,
Away. Yeah.
man. How do you not go in to work that day?
I'm like out of town off.
Gone.
Yeah, like out of the
Time zone.
Okay.
yeah.
Area
No,
code.
not quite.
Area
but-
code,
All right.
maybe.
That was a
Yeah,
crazy
yeah.
day
No,
to
and I
see him
remember
play.
hearing about it. Yeah, but yeah, I was away. I remember that now because I remember seeing the pictures after.
Yeah,
So-
that day was fun.
Yeah. You guys brought us a lot of that, right? And you were firsthand in all of those experiences. And it's nice to reflect on it, especially since both the medias are pretty much gone, right? Radio is all simulcast for the most part. Yeah, we still have a little local contingent, but it's not nearly the media that it was when in its heyday, and print media is gone almost entirely. So, you know, what you guys were able to experience and live was really the twilight of those experiences.
I hope not. And
I hope not either.
And I really am. I'm optimistic. I think that what's happening is not a disappearance, but a correction.
Sure.
I think that the printed media has a place. I think that spoken like podcasts, but I do think radio, like terrestrial radio, has a place. I don't think it's dying technology. I think it just needs to figure out its place in the new landscape of media, and it's still working to get there. And like a lot of these small community stations and papers and more niche publications, I think a lot of them are starting to sort of figure it out.
Yeah, we've had, only 15 years of smartphone technology, right? So we're still very early on in having the abundance of the entire world and every print media and every video and all of everything in your hand as you walk around. Like I constantly refer back to my phone. Just you fact checked or looked at a date, right? Like we're still adapting to this kind of nonstop availability of everything, and we've kind of gotten away from the traditional sense. But yeah, I agree. Maybe there will be a correction, a renaissance, somewhat of a revaluation of, hey, no, this media availability in a mass isn't exactly what we value in our lifestyle. And yeah, we do want to pick up a publication because I miss having a newspaper and sitting down on the porch and having a cup of coffee and reading about stuff that are happening. And it's not like, it's not the same feeling when you pick up the device because you're distracted. When I picked up the Reporter, or even just listening to local radio, right? Like the news segments and even just the general interest segments and whatnot, it was relevant. And now you get force fed because social media and devices are targeted to sell your data and sell things to you. So it's different.
Yeah.
I don't miss it personally, but what was nice is like there's a few people in Essex that get the Harrow News delivered. So, I won't read it because it's their copy, but it's nice to read the headline or whatever. And then my in-laws had picked up a copy of the South Point Sun, had to browse through that, and it was nostalgic. And it was nice to see, some of the things being covered that I, remember covering. So there is, there's value to it.
We'll see how it turns out, right? We still do have reporting. There still is that need. There still is TV news and things like that. So we'll see. Only time will tell what happens, what the evolution is of it. But I'm glad.
Radio's still going. My buddy Cordell, he's up early every morning.
Oh, we got to get Cordell on the show.
We got to get Cordell. He's 20 years this year.
Wow.
On the air here.
On CHYR?
Yeah.
Wow.
On
Blackburn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I listen to
this
Adele
area.
Loisel deliver the news every morning.
Yeah, Del Moiso. Yeah.
Yeah, good old Adele.
I'm Adele Loisel.
So
I hired Adele. She's great.
the time
She is
just
solid.
way back in my day. Well, guys, thanks. I think this episode interesting, right? Like insight that you guys have seen. It's just nice to kind of, explain it. People don't get to talk to you guys on a regular. I get the benefit.
Lucky people.
I get it back.
Yeah.
Come on. But there's for the stories that we just went over in the last hour, there's hundreds of more that will come to mind and we can discuss and further.
Yeah. Well, it spurred ideas as
Right.
I'm listening to Kevin. I'm like, I remember this now.
And like we discussed at this year's episode, some of these podcast episodes, we should reflect on Kingsville and the significance.
Yeah, and we do
in our
have guests that will be joining us.
Right.
that,
Yeah.
So taking that kind of approach instead of somewhat of the negativity, it's more along the lines of who we are as Kingsville and what it's about and what's happened and good and bad. And yeah, it was, just like anywhere, there's a lot that has happened that might be forgotten that we'll discuss. So
Yeah. We have a lot of new residents. So
We
they
do.
may not know some of the more recent history of this
Right.
town.
And you know what the best thing is for those new residents is contacting us through Facebook and or YouTube and wanting to buy this merchandise. But I'm not going to order it because I'm not putting more on my credit card unless you guys want it.
Yeah.
Because it's expensive for me to bulk buy order. But if there's interest, I'll do it. I will. Like I said, these are $60 and T-shirts are $30, and we're not trying to pay our mortgages off or anything like that. It's just a matter of if you want a really, really luxuriously comfy Campus Crew. I'm rubbing my left arm like that's attractive. Like, hey, if Dave's rubbing his left arm, I should buy it. I'm not going to rub you.
It's kind of freaking me out. It's getting a little too rubby.
A lot of rubbing. Thanks, Gary, for enduring us and the publication. If you're interested in TV media or video publication, Gary Glass, reach out, contact. Services are available. Thanks for listening to That Kingsville Podcast. Like and subscribe to YouTube because it does help, surprisingly. We've seen an uptick as of late, so
Cool.
please and thank you.
Love that.
Greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time.
I just bumped my nose. I would bump my nose in the microphone.
There's always a
the whole
first time.